Hello world of YouTube, and welcome to my Silversun Pickups Reformatted Discography review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at all 5 of their records with a little EP to talk about beforehand. But before I get into that, I gotta let you guys know, if you want to see these way ahead of time and a little bit of a beefier version where I talk about my opinions on the sound of the band as a whole and my history with the band as a listener, I really suggest the Patreon cuts. For those who don't know, this actually dropped 1 year ago. Like, this dropped in December of 2020. So, as of posting this, I actually have up through December of 2023 live. And that's a whole 2 years of reformatted reviews. Almost all of them. I'm almost done with them at this point as of posting this. And that's insane. But yeah, I highly suggest, if you want to get some extra content way ahead of time that's a little bit meatier, I suggest the Patreon. These are on the $5 tier. You know, just giving you some perspective. As of posting this, you can get 2 years worth of reformatted reviews already done in your life. You know, lots of goodness. I know Foo Fighters is one that I've covered. I'm filming this in December, so I don't know all the ones that I'll have done, but I know Foo Fighters is going to be one of them because I have an album dropping in 2021 that I really want to listen to. I'm sure I did Blink-182 because they dropped a record last year as of filming this, and I doubt they'll drop another one that quickly. You're just missing out on all sorts of goodness, you know, by joining the Patreon. But that's in a preamble. Let's go ahead and talk about this. Let's get to the discography review portion of this discography review by talking about Pikel. Pikel is actually a really cool idea of an EP to kind of present a lot of the ideas the Silversun Pickups would be exploring throughout their career, because you have some of that 90s aesthetic that they're pretty much synonymous with at this point, like on the opener Kissing Families or on Booksmart Devil and on The Fuzz, but they juxtapose that with some ideas that they would also explore much more later on down their career with some synth texturing, like on Sci-Fi Lullaby. And I also really like how, just in general, they also do other ideas that they won't do to this extent later on in their career, like having a song like Creation Lake, which has their bassist Nicky at the forefront of the band as opposed to their singer Brian doing his thing. But I like this EP a lot. I think it's a nice sort of tangential slice of the band's discography. You know, it's not like a great lead into Carnivas, because I feel like Carnivas is a little like grittier sonic-wise than this, but this has its own form of grit. It has its own sort of offshoots, but I do like that there is a bit of a focus on some acoustic-leaning stuff sonically. I think it's a nice sort of change of pace, having listened to all of their discography, and I like this EP. It's a good point of interest if you enjoy what you've heard from Silversun Pickups and you kind of want to hear them experimenting even in their genesis. I really recommend Pikel. It's a cute little EP. Won't take up too much of your time. It's just there, chilling, waiting for you to indulge in it. Now let's get into their albums proper. You know, it's funny. When it comes to Silversun Pickups, I honestly forget about this record. Not to say that it's completely forgettable when listening to it, but I will say it's the most innocuous piece in their discography, if only because even on a production front, it feels like it's trying to ride the coattails of Neck of the Woods. You know, they are doubling down on synthetics on this project, and I actually really enjoy that a lot. I like the synthetics on this project, and I feel like it's a good way to present the aesthetic that their lyrics are going for in a good sort of mechanical versus natural sort of way. And I think that there's some great moments on here. Like, I dig the opener Cradle. I dig the groove on Pins and Needles a lot. I think Connection is another tight-ass jam. I think Circadian Rhythm and Nightlight are two really good sort of single-worthy jams. And I even really enjoy Ragamuffin still. I know I loved Ragamuffin when I first did my review, and I still think that it's a fucking slamming of a track. And even the last track, a track that I seemingly slammed initially when it came out. I actually had to rewatch my review because I didn't even remember what I said about this when it came out. It's one of those records that literally just kind of left my brain after the year had ended. And yeah, I kind of shack talk the ending, the wild kind, and I do still kind of feel like it meanders a little bit. But I do really enjoy a lot of the ideas the band is at least toying with sonically. It's weird. This record's neat, but ultimately, by the end of my experience, it feels wholly unnecessary. You know, I think some of the hook work is a little more jerky than some of their other stuff. I feel like a lot of the overall aesthetic of the record, while interesting, is pretty much forgettable. It's a record that I feel like, while cool, and surely a point of interest if you enjoy records like Neck of the Woods. You know, I wouldn't say you would love this record, but it's at least a good point of entry if you like the synthetics on that record and you want to see them explored wholesale across the whole project. I would recommend Better Nature. But just overall vibe-wise, this record never sits with me. It's nothing I ever want to revisit, and it just feels like this lost sheep in their discography that I never really ever want to try to bring home. You know, and it could be because there's tracks like Tape Deck and Friendly Fires that, while again, kind of neat, I like the lo-fi tones of Friendly Fires, and I think it's cool that they're trying to do this outright, you know, electro-pop jam with Tape Deck, but it sort of feels like a sort of One Republic knockoff tune. You know, that's the ultimate downfall of this record. Is while it's cool that they dip into these electronic textures, it ultimately feels like also them sort of chasing trends that feel a little dated in music nowadays. You know, it's neat. There's some cool tracks here, but ultimately it's not worth your time at all. You know, in hindsight, while I did rag on Widow's Weeds' production, and I still think it's a weird idea for Butch Vig to make Silversun Pickups, who were already thrown under the bus for having too many Smashing Pumpkins sort of comparisons, throwing them even further in that camp by producing it more like a Smashing Pumpkins record. Ultimately, it makes it a more interesting listening experience compared to Better Nature. And honestly, there's more memorable moments on here. You know, the opener, Neon Wound, feels a lot more kinetically energetic in a way that feels more intrinsically tied to the band as a whole. I still really love the more slower down moment, Freakazoid. And I feel like a track like Strawman, which feels like the most similarly to Swoon, still kind of feels nicely nestled in the place that it's in the track listing. I do feel like it sort of sounds jarring when paired against the rest of the record because nothing really sounds like it. As a whole, I do enjoy what the band is going for on here, and I feel like this sort of collection of tracks just feels more interesting. Hell, even the track following Neon Wound, it doesn't matter why, carries the kineticism from that track incredibly well and throttles it into Freakazoid perfectly. I also really enjoy the closer, We Are Chameleons still. I think that it's cool that they didn't completely abandon a wholly electronically textured track like that. You know, I enjoy that the band is still wanting to toy with ideas, because Don't Know Yet's another single that also feels very electronically tinged, but it's very different from Better Nature, and I feel like it works better in the context of this record. A lot of the experiments and ideas the band is toying with just work better to me. You know, I feel like this is a decent next step if you enjoy their first two records, you know, because even if they don't necessarily do electronics quite like this, if you listen to something like Pikel in tandem with the first two, you'll really enjoy parts of Widow's Weeds. The production might feel a little too on the nose still, but the ideas they're toying with while still sort of spreading their wings in sorts don't feel too out of place. Plus, I gotta be honest, while there are some cool drum and bass grooves on Better Nature, a core component of the Silversun Pickup sound to me that keeps me coming back, Songbirds is better than any groove that they had in that style on Better Nature. You know, I like the grooves on Better Nature, but they aren't nearly as tight as Songbirds. You know, this ultimately just feels like a more compelling listen. And again, that could be partially due because Butch Vig made them sound the way they did, as on the nose as it sounds. But yeah, I mean, I still don't love this record to the same capacity as anything else I'll talk about, but I do feel like it's worth your time more than Better Nature, and feels like a good stepping stone record in their discography as a whole. It's a place that you should get to over Better Nature. Better Nature is more just a point of curiosity, really.
It's the beauty of confession.
Swoon is far from a sophomore slump. It saw them taking that love of 90s alt-rock and shoegaze worship and throwing it into the late 2000s sonically. The guitars on this project sound so much beefier in a way that doesn't detract from the overall mood that the Silversun Pickups like to present. And the grooves on this project are stellar. The opener, There's No Secrets This Year, Growing Old is Getting Old, fucking Panic Switch, or Once Sort of, really settles into its groove. This is easily probably the grooviest record in their catalog, and also the most grand as far as like natural grandiosity is considered, because they throw some strings in on this project in a very Smashing Pumpkins-ish sort of way, but it works on this record, you know, in the same way that synthetics work on a record like Neck of the Woods. Swoon's grandiosity works and helps suit to, again, expand the band's sounds, lift them up, throw them further to the nosebleeds, you know? And even tracks like Substitution and Catch and Release don't feel too off base from even Carnivore sonically, while again, that beef up in production, I could see people sort of drawing them closer to some of the beefier moments in this Smashing Pumpkins' discography. They still have those songs that still just feel generally tied to the 90s as a whole, that again, sets it above records like Widow's Weeds that sort of double down on some of that Smashing Pumpkins vibe in a way that I feel like is a little detractory to their sound. I like this project, and I feel like it's a good companion record to their first record. You know, I feel like if you enjoy the sounds of Carnivore, I would immediately follow that up with Swoon, because they're a good 1-2 punch in their catalog that show the sort of ruggeder beginnings that Carnivore had, and beefing them up without sounding too far off, you know, edge, far off base. You know, I enjoy this project a decent amount, even when revisiting it for this review, because I like Swoon, but I don't listen to it as a whole as much as I do other records in their catalog. I was like, yeah, damn, the hooks work so well on this, the grooves are insane, and I don't mind that grand upscaling that they're aiming for. Obviously, I don't like it as much as Carnivore's, but I respect the effort that they were going for and think it definitely doesn't feel like a sophomore slump to me, and I feel like it's definitely worth your time, again, if you enjoy the sounds off of the debut. Yeah, while the opening chords of Melatonin don't help the Smashing Pumpkins comparisons, what I love about Carnivores is it takes that sort of that sort of idea that people may have had planted into their minds after listening to Lazy Eye and diving into this record and throw it completely out the window with tracks like Well Thought Out Twinkies or Little Lover So Polite or Rusted Wheel that really just sort of act as a tribute to the 90s sonic landscape in general. You know, yes, there are other tracks that have that very Pumpkins-esque touch to them, and I understand that that's a big focal point to people's biggest criticism of this band, but I feel like aesthetically and like sonically, they do their own thing so much across projects, and it's shown especially on the 1 and 2 slots on here. And Carnivore is honestly an incredible starting point for those wanting to get into the band, because it has a lot of that sonic palette that would be very recognizable as this band, even on their later releases, in such a perfect presentation, because it has all of those different dynamics, like your Melatonins, which are very much Pumpkins-esque, the incredibly ear-grabbing Lazy Eye that has just this perfect build-up across the entire track. Other incredible, again, catchy sort of songs like Future Foe Scenario, or the, again, more noisier tinged Little Lover So Polite, or even a track like, again, Rusted Wheel, which is this sort of dreamier, more traditional shoegaze-inspired track that I feel like comes across incredibly well. You know, this band shows their, you know, influences pretty heavily on their sleeve on this project, but I feel like it's a testament to, or I feel like it's an attempt to help define them in a weird sort of way. It shows you what they like, and it still has their own personality shine in moments, whether it's their singer, Brian, screams when he gets really aggressive, or the incredible, again, bass and drum grooves that this band does so very well. You know, this has all of the archetypes, for the most part, that you would see in a Silversun Pickups record, just in a perfect genesis. And that's why I feel like it's the best starting point. It was mine, and I loved this record when I first got into it, and continued to indulge in it over the years. You know, I do enjoy the sonics on this. I like that it's a little more raw. You know, there's a lot more rawness to this that was immediately polished up with Swoon. And I like how frail some of the sounds on here are. I like how raw it gets. I like how the guitars have a certain type of crunch that they've yet to really recreate, even on Widow's Weeds. You know, I feel like this record has a cool idea that's just done incredibly well, and is very much a testament to how well 90s rock could even thrive in the 2000s. You know, this record's great. It's so very good, and it's a record that, again, may seem a little pedestrian to a certain type of fan on the internet, but I still feel like it's worth merit, it's worth your time, and it's incredibly good. I know this record like the back of my hand. One of the craziest things to me, at least at the time, I get it now, was when I initially named this my album of the year in 2012. Above Death Grips, above Kendrick Lamar, this sat at the very top. And while retroactively I sort of changed that thought, I still hold this record to a higher regard. It was still on my albums of the decades. On my Discography, it's still high up in my 2012 list. You know, I still think this record is the best execution of what Silversun Pickups could have evolved to as a band. You know, because it still has that 90s worship across the board. But the overabundance and the injection to a higher degree of synthetics does a lot of greatness for this band. And not in the same way that it did on Better Nature or on Widow's Weeds. There's this true grit and forebodingness to the synths that I feel like still enhances the sonics tenfold on this project. Whether it's Skin Graft synths or Bloody Mary's more spacious atmosphere, the synths enhance it so very much. Or even the synthetic groove on Busy Bees that the bass would, you know, come to marry with across that track. Or even a track like Simmer that sort of evolves as the track goes. It's just this really tight, you know, catchy song that has this beefier runtime. You know, the band is firing off on so many great cylinders on this project that I still, to this day, can't put it down. If I'm ever, it's one of those things I'll revisit it a couple times a year still. Like, it's catchy, it's got some really good hooks, like on Bloody Mary, or Make Believe, or Skin Graft, or Here We Are, or Mean Spirits. Like, there's some really good crescendos. Some of the points where the guitar really ramps up in intensity is still worth it to me. It's still great. Like, the guitar work on the breakdown of Make Believe, like, with that bass and drum groove, when the guitars really start to get into that groove as well, it's so perfect. It comes in at the perfect fucking time. And I love this record. I think it's great. I think a lot of because they wanted to focus more on thematics and imagery and horror and the lyrics, and I feel like it comes across. I haven't really talked about the lyrics on this record outside of Better Nature, but to me, I feel like Silversun Pickups' lyrics are very much not the forefront. It's more about the tone, the vibe that they put out, and some would see that as very artificial, and I totally get that. I do feel like they do paint some good imagery, and some of the lines on some of the records like Carnivas do feel like they come from a good emotional resonance, but by and large, especially on Swoon, you know, it feels more like the lyrics are meant to be sort of an accompaniment to the music and not the other way around, you know. But on this record, I feel like they did a great marriage of having this overall tonal idea they wanted to have the lyrics go to and have it cement really well with the synthetics and the overall atmosphere that the record is going for. I mean, even the tracks like the titles, like Skin Graft, that's a really sort of harsh procedure to go through, and I feel like the music really accentuates that. Bloody Mary, they spin it into a song about child abuse, but the whole idea of Bloody Mary, the myth, the urban legend, fitting into that works incredibly well. You know, I love this record. I feel like it's still sort of a black sheep in my sort of 10 out of 10s because I love this record that much. But I gotta tell you, man, if you're willing to sit through it, if you're willing to give it a shot, I feel like it could surprise you. You know, I get shit for it all the time because it's, again, I've been put up with those critics that, like, love only the highest of quality stuff. That sort of dwindled away as the years have gone on, but it's one of those records that I still just, I hold near and dear to my heart because I think it works so very well at what it's trying to do, and I respect the hell out of the band for pulling it off so well, especially given how they followed it up. You know, for them to build up their career to this and to still have this be this sort of magnum opus to me is insane. But it is. It's my favorite Silversun Pickups record, and I feel like while it's not the great starting point, it's absolutely a point that you need to get to. And that was it. That's my reformatted discography review. What did you think about it? Did you like it? Did you not? Let me know in the comments down below. If you did like it, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. Again, if you want to join their ranks to get early access to content, and at this point, 2 years of Patreon cuts of reformatted discography reviews, along with a plethora of other stuff. It's linked in the description. I'm going to get out of here, though. I've been Val Rack. You guys have good days, lives, situations, and I'll see you another day.